Good afternoon, everyone. Rich Bren opening this session today. As I understand it, our pickle man has another commitment that he's finishing up right now, so don't be disappointed. I'm sure you will hear from him before this is over. So again, welcome to the monthly truck stop webinar. It's my honor to be given this opportunity. You may or may not have met me. I've been active with some of these events and also some of these webinars in the past. So again, Rich Bren, welcoming you and also your host to present this topic today. Please note on our opening slide here, these are monthly. Again, as you know, second Thursday each month, 2 p.m. Our intent with these is to provide you various updates, informational items. They do not qualify for state CE, however, other programs are available. If you're seeking those CE credits, please email the trs@ibci.net, and you can find out what's available there. And as we go forward, please always think of how these events can bring you more timely and more important and applicable information. As we look at each one of these events, keep in mind that they are somewhat interactive. You can use the question or the chat window. It's preferred that you place your questions, however, into that particular box. So as your screen is set up and you're watching this presentation, please look for that area. As time allows, we'll respond to those towards the end, and if we are not able to do them while online, you can count on the fact that we'll do a follow-up and we'll post those. And I believe, as is normally the standard too, you're going to see this presentation posted out to the Motor Carrier Insurance Education Foundation's website so that you can download the slides. Any of the items that I referenced today will have URLs that you can utilize later. And as noted there, if you have any questions, please call in and see if we can get things corrected as we go. I have a lot of material today, so I'm gonna rock and roll a little bit, as I like to say. Put on your seatbelt because I might exceed the speed limit. I'm not a southern boy like Tommy. I might be a fast-talking northern guy in some of your eyes, but please bear with me. A lot to share with you. I believe this is an important topic and very timely for us to look at what's going on with regulations, etc. Who's Rich Bren? Well, if you've never met me, I'm part of this group. I'm a TRS designee. Proud to say that I've been hanging around trying to learn from Tommy Ruke for over 21 years now. And I'm also in this insurance industry with you. I work for a specialty agency based out of Cleveland, Ohio. I'm an Arizona guy, but their home office is up in Cleveland. International Access Program Managers is where I hang my hat for employment. Why am I brought into this thing? Well, I'm a truck insurance guy. That's what I've been doing since 1987. Always had a personal interest in trucks, but on this particular topic, when it comes to truck insurance, I've always been kind of a geek that wondered what caused these things. And so from a risk management and a truck safety perspective, I've always watched accident to causation, talked to a lot of people over the years about fatigue factors and other things. And again, I've also been a retail agent myself, spent 8 years in that role, and enjoyed that opportunity to work with trucking companies, their management, their teams, about how they can succeed and make people successful. One of the things I like to say is that the real simple concept of what truckers do is something I learned from a guy named Danny Baker. And truckers deliver freight on time and damage-free, and that's what they're about. And I had a trucker remind me last week that they got to get paid for doing that too. That's important to them. This topic of sleep apnea is especially close to me. I am a patient board member of the American Sleep Apnea Association, and not only just myself, but multiple family members, father, sister, now brother-in-law, and I believe my other sister and brother are also in the process of being tested and possibly will be treating also for obstructive sleep apnea. I'm a hose head. That's the reason that I'm giving this to you. As you see this picture, yeah, I'm like that guy up at the top center or that guy to the top right. I wear a mask on my head. I put something around my jaw that kind of looks like a jock strap that keeps my chin shut. But that's what I got to do at night for me to get a good night's rest. So yeah, I'm a member of the Hose Head Club, and I tell a lot of people, as I just explained to you what I look like, know, that woman sitting there kind of smiling at that guy, yeah, my wife thinks I'm dead sexy when I got all that stuff strapped on my head. But, you know, there's a lot going on out there. Sleep apnea is being promoted in a lot of different venues. My daughter snapped this picture over in California. You can see the billboard. You know, sleep apnea kills. And so this is out there in the public domain, but we're here today to talk specifically about the trucking world and what's going on. So there's a lot of hype. There's the headlines. You know, stuff's on Facebook. It's got to be official. Got to be true without on the web, and I'm going to show you some stuff that way. But we also want to look at the regulatory issues. We want to talk about what's occurred in the past that led to the law that was passed in October. I want you to understand what obstructive sleep apnea is if you don't know. Risk factors that have been out there and been talked about for quite some time in the commercial vehicle world, and then also show you some resources that exist. Headlines. What's out on the World Wide Web? This is stuff that was just posted in the last 30 days. So, you know, again, we all heard about Obama signed this sleep apnea bill. And so the school bus fleet, you know, group has been talking about that, as well as many other places. Again, keep in mind that later on you can use these links if you want to look any of this up. Wouldn't you know it, as soon as something goes out like that, there's people that are promoting ebooks, and they're talking about how you can deal with this as a commercial motor vehicle driver and safety element. I share these things so that you know public perceptions developing already. Portable diagnostic services, you know, somebody's out there promoting this kind of a thing as a means to do what? To do the testing of these drivers. Treatment also being promoted by a group called Sleep Right Solutions. And so again, truck drivers, you know, everybody's looking at the opportunity now as we talk about this, that they're anticipating a reg's going to come along that's going to change things. And wouldn't you know it, we got opposition going already. If you notice, this is the truck and bus accident lawyers already jumping onto it saying sleep apnea is dangerous. And so this is part one. I don't know how many parts there's going to be, but they're starting already. And again, there's another article out there, and yes, this is about commercial vehicles, but just in general, we have somebody else talking about the dangers that exist out there on the roadway and trying to blame it on sleep apnea and other issues. Other headlines. Now, these weren't in the last 30 days, but they were in the last year. I did this presentation back in January, and some of these actually were pulled at that point in time. Back then, it was already being stated, you know, truck drivers aren't telling their doctors. They're understating their apnea. At that point in time, there was a lot of controversy going on already about how portable diagnostic devices could be used. And so I reference these things to you because public perception and the things that are going to influence this going forward and influence you as to what you believe this is about. Other items that are out there, I want you to realize that this is a societal challenge. This isn't just truck drivers and other big fat guys and obese people. Kids, there's a lot being found out as to what's going on with children and their learning challenges and maybe their hyperactivity, etc. Women are just as well facing this. I mentioned my two sisters. If you look at one, you would never believe, and she probably had apnea as a teen. Now looking back and realizing. Bariatric surgery, you know, there's all kinds of people that are trying different things. That doesn't always resolve it. And again, as noted there, women are highly impacted by this and may be denying it. There are challenges, again, in the realm of pediatrics, children. Treatments do help us to deal with other things. The reason I threw that slide in there is that you're going to hear me reference later on something called comorbidity. And how oxygen deprivation challenges us. And that's the point on that last one, some of the cardiovascular problems that arise. So the reason for showing you these things is that this is out there. It's influencing society. We have a huge challenge at all ages, both genders. And what we need to be considering is what is it that we're going to deal with this, you know, so that we can be efficient time-wise, so that we can be cost economical, but also effective as we go forward in dealing with these things. we said we're going to talk about regulatory issues today. So I want you to know that a lot of what I'm going to share in the next couple slides came from a great presentation. A couple of items that are on my personal LinkedIn profile that you can go out. You can look for Richard Bren on LinkedIn. And on my homepage, I actually have 2 resources that you can download that came out of this. And it has to do with what is coming about next year with the National Registry of Certified Medical Examiners. Now, what that presenter shared that day is just the basics. And that's what I want you to understand is that, yes, a bill was passed by Congress, signed by the President. And in general, what it's saying, what it's telling us that's going to happen is that we are now entered into a realm where the only way that the FMCSA is to be guiding this is through rulemaking, not utilization of guidance. We want a clear, definitive rule is basically what this is come down to. And so that you know, sleep disorders include what you hear OSA, obstructive sleep apnea. And we're going to hit on what that specifically is later on. All this stuff, I show you the World Wide Web. Well, our federal government posts a lot of this stuff. And so those of you that aren't the regulatory geeks and can recite all these things, as some people can, I want you to know that you can go out, you can hit these rules and regs. And so under 391.41, the physical qualifications, it says clearly that a person is not supposed to be driving a commercial vehicle. This is called a safety-sensitive position unless he or she is medically certified and physically qualified. All right, so that's what your medical certification is about. And also that person is supposed to, when they're operating that commercial vehicle, have with them a copy or the original of that medical examiner's certificate. And so oftentimes when you and I are sitting out there looking at SMS scores and that's basic for driver fitness, it doesn't mean that they're unfit. It means that they haven't proven that they're fit. If they don't have that, that's where they're getting written up. So that's a lot of what we see in that driver fitness basic is that they simply didn't have their med card with them. Even if it was done, they didn't have it with them. So OSA, the current status, the deal is the only requirement today is what's out there, and you can read it. It's on the internet. It's in these regulatory books under the B5 section. That driver is to have had no established medical history or a clinical diagnosis of a respiratory dysfunction. And I pause there for a second. When I first started treating, and this would have been in the mid-2000s, actually my first exams were in the late 90s, but I wasn't diagnosed until the mid-2000s, by around 04. I was actually going to a lung doctor at that point in time. And later I've found sleep specialists that I deal with, but that's often, where this starts, is that you go to someone who does these testing, and that person has identified that you have something that may lead to your ability to operate safely. As I said, a safety-sensitive position. So as you look at this, keep in mind the only thing that's out there today is a medical examiner's handbook for guidance. These examiners are supposed to, on their own accord, understand and guide people towards the best practices. And that's the way it's been, and that's the way it's going to be for a while. There's no change. This law didn't change any of that. What this law did do is put out there a rulemaking requirement, and in reality, that may just simply delay the ultimate requirement that comes down from the FMCSA. I want you to see in its entirety. Yes, this is hard to read, and it's a lot of words, but again, you can go to the FMCSA website and see this. And again, look to the third bullet point. You don't have to read it all. It's simply saying that a driver of a commercial vehicle, right, that's what it says. They must be able to take oxygen in well. And one of the problems that arises is sleep apnea. And so all these other things, asthma, et cetera, may take away their ability. And as you'll notice also in that group, that paragraph, that bullet point, the last line must be referred to a specialist for further evaluation. So the medical examiner is sitting there talking to them, trying to figure out, trying to determine if they have any of these problems. And again, if apnea comes up, then they're supposed to refer them on. So that's what is out there. That one's in the regs. You don't have to just read it on the internet. That one's out there to be seen in all the FMCSRs. Back to the feds. There's the FAQ section of the FMCSA website. Well, am I disqualified? What's the guidance that's out there? Taken straight from the FMCSA's website. Drivers should be disqualified until a diagnosis of their apnea has been ruled out or it's been treated. And as a condition of continuing disqualification, it's recommended that a commercial motor vehicle driver agree to continue uninterrupted therapy like CPAP. And we'll talk about what that is. That's continuous positive airway pressure. That's a machine like I wear. That's what that hose on my head doing, is it pushing air into my body at night. And so when you start testing with that, then there's ongoing monitoring and other testing that they continue to do to figure out that, yes, you are being treated. So once you're diagnosed of probable sleep apnea, and that can come down to that simple discussion that's going on with the medical examiner. Are you ever drowsy during the day? Excessive daytime somnolence. Are you drowsy? That's easier for us to understand, right? You might be temporarily disqualified when you start talking about that until that can be ruled out. Now, the reality is we all go through ups and downs with our health and different times, and maybe, allergies or something are bothering you, but the reality is what the medical examiner needs to be looking at is looking for a chronic problem that exists. And they need to consider if they should certify that driver based on how severe and frequent that they have these drowsiness problems, if there's other elements, other problems that they can see, and discuss with them, the sleep element of passing out and falling asleep during driving. Symptomatic relief with some kind of treatments, or is there something long-term like the CPAP device that needs to be done? So that's what's out there, and I share that with you. You need to know what's been said. A lot of people, there's a lot of confusion as to what's going on. This guidance is that, it's guidance, and so this new law is saying we're not going to live by just guidance. We want rulemaking, and guidance simply comes down to something that's been brought together. Could be by a board. We're going to talk in a minute about what a medical review board is and one that exists now. But the board isn't charged with looking at the big picture, taking into account what it's going to cost and how do we go about this. And so guidance is intended to be for the overall good, for society. That's great. And outside input might come into the process, but not necessarily. So it could be, I hate to say misguided, but that's the reality. You're taking guidance from a board. Now, the ATA, the American Trucking Association, was a proponent of rulemaking. They didn't want to live under guidance, and I don't need to read all this to you, but clearly a statement made by Bill Graves, I highlighted some points there. We want to go through rulemaking so that we know that the valuable data and input for the agency is brought to the table. And they want an analysis of the benefits and the costs that are going to go into this regulation of sleep apnea. Not saying that it shouldn't be done, but we want to go into it with our eyes open, right? And so when you're looking at 3 million truck drivers, you look at that second paragraph, this mandated testing in that could exceed $1 billion. Just what the trucking industry wants, right, is yet another challenge upon their shoulders. But let's go about it with our eyes open. As you look at guidance versus rulemaking in another circle, the American Academy of Sleep Medicine, they also believe in it, as well as the board that I'm a part of. We're proponents of the rulemaking process, and the reason that the sleep docs want to be involved is that they want to provide that evidence. They want to contribute to the best practices. somebody's going to be treating this sleep medicine, they want to make sure that all the regulations in that are accurate and correct to deal with it. I'll be honest with you, there are dentists out there. You know, there's the snake oil salesman. There are people that are selling devices and saying this is going to take care of it. You've seen the commercials on TV, right? Put a Band-Aid over your nose, and you're going to stop snoring, and you're going to be healthier. Well, you know, is that really the case? Well, let's get to the facts. So, what's going to happen now? We've gone through this process. We said we're going to do rulemaking. In reality, a normal process takes 2 to 3 years. Well, this one's complex. This one's got a lot of stakeholders, and this one could take a little bit longer. And we have this cost-benefit analysis. You know, we got $1 billion ticket already being identified as the ultimate cost maybe to go into this. So these items have to transpire. We strongly advocate people to participate, right? And again, I think some of you heard Mr. Mosley speak about some of the issues that were presented, or I guess that was Steve Bryan maybe, that said, you know, in the past, some of these items that came up for rulemaking, nobody commented on. They showed one significant one that only 76 people commented on. Well, this one might be a lot more controversial. So those who contribute comments are in need of a response, and so those comments must be read, analyzed, and responded to. So I'm going to show you in a minute that this topic has been looked at, so there is a lot of data that's out there, and there have been some specific recommendations, so those are good things. Those may help this rulemaking process speed forward. Politics are politics, and even inside the trucking industry, you have the ATA versus the OIDA group. And so while they agreed on the rulemaking course of action, I'm not sure that they agree on what to do next as to the actual medical guidelines in that. So we could even see somewhat of a fracture and a fight inside of the trucking industry. So as we look at other groups that are out there, the National Sleep Foundation, believe it or not, was opposed to that bill, saying that it's going to slow things down, it's going to kill outcomes. And who knows what may transpire in the next, who knows, number of years that could either further crush and restrict this. So these are the things that are out there. I wish I could say that I was the expert that brings this to you as to what's going to happen with rulemaking. Thankfully, I know some people that are in this political world and how rulemaking works, and that's their view on this. So what I shared with you is kind of an insider that's been around this stuff in the past and saying we've got more than 24 to 36 months probably on this one. What's the history of this thing? Oh, great, a whole bunch more alphabet soup lying in front of me, right? Well, I want you to understand the influencers of what's out there right now and how we ended up with this bill. You know what the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration is? Well, they actually have a medical review board, and if you want to know more about it, you can go out there. There's a link that tells you about it, and there's a group called the Carrier Safety Advisory Committee, and these groups were brought together in 2011, and in February of 2012, they actually put their final report together on this topic. The Medical Review Board, the mission of it is to help improve the safety of the highways. That's great, you know, to bring experts to help in the medical standards and the guidelines and the research that is behind, you know, the final decisions on who gets to operate commercial vehicles on the roadways. So I want you to realize that's not a new group. That one's existing, and that one's been out there, and they contributed to what we have going today. And without going into any names and details, you can go read more about these people, but they tried to bring experts who understand this specialized area specific to bus and truck, and that's who's on the medical review board. Good people, competent, knowledgeable, okay, coming from the medical side. The Motor Carrier Safety Advisory Committee brings in others, and again, this group is charged by Congress since 2006 to bring information, advice, recommendations to the FMCSA. And so here you have attorneys, you have the transportation industry, you have the insurance industry represented on this side of the table. So these are the groups that were brought together, MCIEF and MRB, and they came up with a final report. and they brought it together and they submitted their recommendations, their guidance for motor carriers, trucking companies, right, for the drivers, for the medical examiners, on what we should do with this OSA issue in determining it and how to deal with it as we go forward for commercial motor vehicle safety. Now, their recommendations, you know, they're available, they're published, they're out there in the World Wide Web, and we can get them to you if you think you want to read them. But you know, they gave general recommendations. They did identify those things that, you know, should immediately disqualify or slow that certification down for a driver. What is it that we would do in a conditional status? As you know, there are other people with high blood pressure and diabetes and you know, other problems where they get a waiver, but you know, they may be conditional. So they address that here. They started talking about the diagnosis, you know, the severity element of when someone starts falling into a treatment plan, and then they started talking about this treatment that I already referenced to you, you know, the hose that's shoving air into me. That's a positive airway pressure type treatment. They also talked about other types of treatment. I think you're well aware of, you know, trying to reduce weight through the bariatric surgery. There's a lot of people that try to repair this sleep apnea problem by having throat work, actual facial work, changing your bone structure in that so that air can flow more freely in. Tracheostomy, I mean, being so bad that there's actually a hole in your throat where they plug in the pipe so that you can breathe and sleep at night. I mean, that is a reality to a severe apnea person, and other alternative treatments that are out there. So these were all part of that recommendation that came down. October 2012, just a little over a year ago, the ATA Safety Committee, you know, put together their statement and recommendations. And so as you can see, talking about it back then, they wanted rulemaking. They wanted, in that second paragraph, objective standards. We want to focus on the conditions that pose a substantial elevated crash risk, not just height, but, you know, what is it? Give me some sound data. Give me some analysis. Show me a cost benefit. And let's look at some effective treatment things. That's what the ATA Safety Policy Committee had presented. And with that, the ATA hooked up with the TCA leadership, and they sent a letter off to Administrative Farrow, and they recommended that, you know, we go through rulemaking, not just guidance. So that was November of 2012. Not quite a year later, we got a bill passed. So Public Law 113-45, aka the Sleep Apnea Bill. That's what's in place. So now, again, I've led you to this point. I don't know what month, day, and year to put in there as to how long it's going to take for this to come through. That gives you an idea, you know, of what's transpired. But a lot of that, you know, is just 2012, 2013, and we're going to see in a minute. But this topic's been around a lot longer. So we get through that. All right, I've been talking a lot about this issue. You know, what is it? What is sleep apnea? You know, some of you may know, and so I'm sorry if this is something you already know. Don't take a nap on me. Apnea is actually a Greek word that means without breath. And so a person with sleep apnea has these involuntary moments where they stop breathing. And so if you've been around that snorer who suddenly quiets, and then they gasp or they choke, you know, and what's going on with them? Well, that's really an apnea event. And so what's happened is they've stopped breathing. Now, I don't know how long you can hold your breath, but again, you're asleep and you don't know you're holding your breath. You've actually just stopped breathing. In your mind, your body says, hey, dummy, you know, you need to breathe again. And that's where the gasping, that's where the awakening, that's where the choke comes back. That brings you back and starts you back up into that process. So, you know, there are three kinds of apnea. We don't need to get all wrapped up in what causes them. The one that you hear the most about is obstructive sleep apnea. And so that's for me, that's what I have. I actually have a closure that transpires inside my throat when I sleep, is that my throat just relaxes and that air passageway closes up. And so that's obstruction, right? That's stopping it. And so the same token, if you don't have a large enough hole in the back of your throat, you can have other things that are going on that are slowing down your airflow. That's an obstruction, right? That's OSA. So despite the difference, you know, what's going on is that people who don't breathe well, they're losing their breath, right? They're repeatedly during the night having these cessations. Sometimes it's hundreds of times during the night. And, I guess they can hold their breath better than others. Some of them can last up to a minute before they suddenly realize that, hey, dummy, you got to start breathing again. So that's the difference. There can be mild, there can be moderate, and there can be severe, and it's a matter of how many of these stop breathing incidents transpire during a set amount of time that determines how bad you are as far as challenged and suffering from OSA. In most cases, the person that's the sleeper, they don't know that this is going on. They're not fully awakened, but yet they're not fully asleep. And when you don't take care of it, it has other consequences. And so when you start looking at people with sleep apnea, you oftentimes find high blood pressure, heart disease, stroke, you have accidents, you have people who develop diabetes, depression, and other ailments. And so the term being used out there is comorbidities. Morbid is not a good thing, right? Well, this is where one of these ailments brings their buddies to the party. And so when you have OSA, these other things show up, or these other things show up, and all of a sudden, because of a depreciating quality of life, this ailment comes upon you. So I can't tell you that one or the other is first. They all just kind of seem to show up at the party together. And so, on goes life in not such a glorious manner. So what's an apnea person like? All right, so I just want to give you an example. So if you consider a person who has moderately severe apnea, where the testing has transpired, where they've had 78 episodes in an hour. So in 60 minutes, 60 seconds, we have 3,600 divided by 78. So every 46 seconds, on average, some sort of an awakening transpires with this person. So, snore, 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 nothing, nothing, nothing. It's nice and quiet. Gasp, choke. There's the awakening that transpires. And so it's not every 46 seconds. It's not like Old Faithful. But, that's what's going on. And during this whole process, and so in this hour and in the next hour and in the ever-transpiring number of minutes and hours, the body is being deprived of oxygen. It's not getting into your body. You're not breathing. It's not transferring out of your lungs, and so your oxygen level in your bloodstream begins to diminish, and you get headaches because of the oxygen deprivation, and you don't get to sleep deeply, and so you don't have REM sleep, and REM is where that that deep sleep, where that brain health, where that processing that impacts your cognitive skills. That's where all those things happen when you're in a deep sleep. And so the person that isn't sleeping well, is kind of like tired of holding their breath all night long, right? It's like swimming all night long. And so you're in bed for maybe 3 or 4 hours, and it's just like, this isn't good for me anymore. I got to get up. Or you actually sleep in chairs, you sleep on the edge of a couch, because that's the only way that you do get a little bit of rest and you feel like something's happening. So, I present this to you and you're like, yeah, right, whatever. This is my story. So as you look at what I realized, this was me, all right? This was me at about the age just short of 40. And when I finally began to treat, that's what was going on with me. So I share that with you to let you know that I was that guy that had horrible headaches, popping aspirin. I knew what it was like. And so when it's kind of like when somebody starts to reveal it and talk to others, yeah, the same thing is there. So I want you to know that this is real. Like I said, it's all walks of life, and that's what they go through. What happens with a higher risk person like this? I think some of what you're going to see here in the next few slides may somewhat surprise you. The Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration back in 2004 actually published something about a research study that went on there looking at high-risk commercial drivers. And back in 2004, 9 years ago. Sleep disorders were identified back then as a factor that influenced the crash risk 3 to 14 times the norm. So someone with a sleep disorder versus someone without, 3 to 14 times more likely. And so throughout this research, it was one of the 5 most cited factors related to driver risk. Was when we were looking at sleep disorders, not just OSA, but sleep disorders. And inside that same study, we were talking to safety managers, and they were talking to other experts. What are the things that lead to a driver risk and the potential for a crash? Inattentiveness. Well, we're promoting a lot of the cellular technology, distractions, and the other things inside the vehicle. But back in 2004, those things, what is it that made a driver inattentive? Remember I told you, if you don't sleep well, you could lose your cognitive skills. Your brain's tired. You're just unable to do all those driving things that you are required to do in a big commercial truck with any awakening, a real solid, strong operating brain. Apnea was identified back then out of 16. Look at the safety managers put it just about in the middle. Other experts had one notch up the list as far as a propensity to cause a problem. I want you to point out, other things, other medical conditions back then in 2004 were already being talked about. So that study's out there. That's something that you can see, and I share that so that these are influencers of days gone by still in play. In the last year, high risk also came up, and so just about a little over a year ago, there was something being published about big fat truckers being a problem, and I hate to say it that way, but obesity was being identified as something that leads to accidents. Now, in the write-up and in what was stated is that they were trying to say sleep apnea was one of the problems. It could be sleep disorders, but apnea comes up first. It's a glamorous thing to talk about, right? Drowsiness is the big issue that you saw even in the federal regs talking about a person being drowsy. In that same item that was published, they also talk about other factors. The large person may not be as agile. They may be fatigued due to other issues, not just sleep apnea, but again, not good press. And so I share these things to keep in mind what is influencing the thoughts and what is tearing down the perspective of the safe truck driver. Legal perspective. Well, litigation, right? We're in the business of helping these people out and dealing with these challenges. So one opinion comes from, some excerpts that I'm taking here from a transportation attorney that published something within the last year. And this attorney is talking about the plaintiff's attorney, the other side. They're noting this as an area of potential liability. And they like to talk about punitive punishment damages, right? You were negligent in your hiring. You were negligent in retaining that driver. You failed to exercise reasonable care. And so here we have an attorney, bringing forth to us that which we know happens. Were you reasonable? Were you the reasonable man in your role? Are you going to be able to sit on the stand and defend your actions, your decisions, or your lack of inaction? So, that's out there. These things are arising. It's already being noted that drivers who have what's noted a high-risk profile. One of the things that early on they wanted to say is that anybody whose body mass index or BMI is of such and such a magnitude, or their neck size is of such and such a magnitude, well, you have to have sleep apnea because everybody with sleep apnea looks like that. Well, they don't, but some do. And if a large percentage of the population is like that, that may be an indicator, but it doesn't guarantee it. And so the point here is if a driver is in an accident where it looks like they drifted in the roadways or they maybe drifted off to sleep and that was a contributing factor, if they start looking at these other things, they're going to say, well, you should have known. They're high risk. They have the profile. So as you sit in this, there's another legal perspective, more attorneys commenting. The motor carrier who stood silent on this issue may not have acted reasonable care. Well, what's that mean? Well, it's out there. There should have been someone that took care of this. And so, you again weren't acting in a reasonable manner. It's not easily addressed today without some specific regulations, this guidance out there. I showed you the guidance that's out there. And so, is that what you're going to subscribe to? Is that what you're going to stand before the jury and say, well, I didn't believe that was, good and reasonable, what was put out there and posted? Are you taking a proactive approach? If you do go after this thing, keep in mind that there's other laws that you're going to be challenged with, and you got to be fair to the driver, because if you're not fair to the driver, they might sue you. So again, which side of the coin is going to flip to you, and you're going to be challenged by the public, or you could be challenged by your own employee drivers inside this thing. Let's pick up on that ADA and again, I'm not an expert, but we all hear of ADA and reasonable accommodations, and so, if a trucking company has a driver who has to deal with this, and they're supporting them, what's reasonable? And can you modify or adjust the work environment to enable that person with OSA to do their jobs and function well? Can you make modifications or adjustments? And geez, what does that mean? Does that mean I have to put them on a different route? Does that mean I can't utilize them for as many hours a day? Does that mean that, the equipment in their vehicle has to be changed up? And so as you look at that, is it just giving them electricity so they can run their machine and maybe some other minor equipment changes? It's going to vary. It's going to vary by the person. It's going to vary by the route. It's going to vary by where they're based. I've talked to truck drivers. There's a strong advocate that publishes a lot of things out in the LinkedIn network. Bob Stanton, he's a sleep apnea guy himself, and he talks about, nearly having hypothermia because of where he was parked, the temperature inside of his vehicle, the pushing of cold air into his lungs for hours at a time, did what? It lowered his body's temperature. He was nearly in a hypothermia state. So, I can't tell you that that's the responsibility of the trucking company, but might they again be held irresponsible for allowing a guy to do that, not having a warm enough tap? So as you can see, this is a very, very difficult issue to address. It's one of those, they say it, it's almost like I'm damned if I do, I'm damned if I don't, but that's kind of what we're facing here. Is a very, very difficult thing. So what do I do? Tommy's real good about sending everybody home with some plan of action. A bunch of stuff's been thrown at you here in 40 minutes. What am I going to do? Well, there's a cost to do something, and there's a cost to do nothing. So as you go out and you're talking to your truckers and you're trying to help them, I believe that there needs to be a plan, and not just being, the ostrich sticking their head in the sand, but you have to decide, what am I doing here? And I strongly recommend, as I already told you, go download those items that I referenced. Take a look at this medical examiner thing, and you need a good certified quality medical examiner, and you better lock into one, because new regs are coming along in January, and by next May they have to be certified, and there may not be a lot of certified medical examiners, and so you want to make sure that your truckers know where they can get to one, and your trucker wants to know how they're dealing with this, and that they want to understand what that examiner is asking, and the plans of action that would transpire going forward should one of their drivers potentially have this risk. So, that's my personal first advice. Have a plan, find a medical examiner, start looking into this thing, and then, truly, on top of that, to the next level, establish your position regarding what are you going to do with this stuff. When it comes to testing and treatment, what are you doing with it? You got to look out to those guidance and those best practices and feel that you're doing the right and reasonable and prudent thing. And in reality, there's costs, and there's going to be some challenges out there. So, what are the costs, and under what conditions are you, trucking company, helping to pay for any of this? And I come back to telling you honestly that I've personally been involved in some very high deductible healthcare plans. I have had to pay for a lot of this stuff myself. I'm not whining at you. I'm just talking about the fact. But if I want a quality of life, if I want to avoid having strokes, if I want to have a longer quality life, if I want to have a life in bed with me at night rather than pushing me out onto the couch or telling me I sound like a bear, or being so tired herself because she can't sleep around me. You know, you have to face those realities. I have to pay for my own prescriptions. I have to pay for my own eyeglasses. I pay for a lot of this stuff, you know, and this is one of those things that honestly, my spouse will order my sleep apnea equipment for me to know that, you know what, we're both better off when we're doing that. Resources. There's a lot of stuff that's out there. You know, watch out for the snake oil stuff. Be aware even of what's published by our regulators. The FMCSA, you know, I'm with the government, I'm here to help you. Well, they do have on their website a spotlight on sleep apnea. You can read it. You can see that they have 3 segments: drivers, industry, tools, and resources. You know, from drivers, there's stuff about snoring and your blood pressure and how you talk to your doc and questioning yourself. And there's some quizzes that are out there, et cetera, under the industry part. I question how current those are, but they're there, okay? And there's some other tools and resources that can be utilized. So that's out there on their website. I'm here to put my shameless plug in, my personal request that, you know, you look at the Sleep Apnea Association. This is a patient-focused group. This is help for the patient and for the undiagnosed. And so there are items that are out there available on the site. You can actually see and learn and get a better understanding of what apnea is about with videos that are there online. You can join this. You can get into a newsletter. The apnea support groups are actually awake groups. And so when I personally lived in North Carolina, I attended a meeting one time where they had people like myself, as well as from the medical field, and people bringing equipment in, and you can learn about it. So, you know, it's a help group to help support and give. So the support forums online, but there are live events that transpire, and there's a directory online, and there's a lot of assistance that exists. And to this point, who's going to pay for it? There are those welfare patients that need things, and through the ASAA, we actually have an assistance program for the poor so that they can actually get equipment given to them. Yes, there's sign-up fees and there's some shipping charges, but I believe it's about $100 and they can get a machine, which compared to buying a new one, you know, that's a smoking deal. Resources. I'm kind of a LinkedIn freak, as maybe some of you have heard or picked up on, and I'm just telling you there's a bunch of groups that have talked about this over the last year, and there's a few of them named there. I'm going to just tell you that if you go out to LinkedIn and you enter sleep under groups, you're going to find 466 options as of the other day. And if you go to sleep apnea, there's 50 listings there. So if you want to learn more, you know, start monitoring some of what's out there, and, you know, watch for a guy named Bob Stanton and some others. You know, Schneider National's done a lot in this area. JB Hunt. So there are in our industry some, you know, well-known names and some strong advocates and some pretty intelligent people that can contribute. And just crank off a few more URLs to you. Sleep Safe, another place to go. And you know, this isn't just truck drivers and Sleep Safe. So there's a lot of problems in industry and shift work. You know, manufacturers and that, you know, they likewise have problems with people not being alert. And so, you know, sleepy problems with employees are not just exclusive to the trucking industry. Sleep Access, again, is a disease management, fatigue prevention wellness group. So they're there. One I don't have listed here is Third Pillar. Third Pillar is over in England. I've gotten a lot of stuff from them. Here's another one specific to driving healthy. And so again, as you can imagine, FMCSA related truck driver, commercial vehicle stuff. And then the last one, I've got that last one in bold because our friend from ATRI, Dan Murray, who came and spoke at a few of our events here in the last few weeks, he's promoting the North American Fatigue Management Program. And so believing in Dan and believing in ATRI, and if he's done some research on it, I honestly haven't, but you know, I intend to. You know, this is U.S. and Canada, I believe, coming together on some of these issues. So again, yet another resource. So that's what I've got. I ran through it, left a little bit of time for questions. I hope that you picked up some insights here, and I don't see anything in the chat group, and yet maybe Mr. Ruke or Beth are on the other side. They've seen some questions come in. But there's my information. I hope that something was gained from it, brought you some awareness. You know, understand what's come down. Nothing really has changed, folks. A rule's been made that we're going to, you know, have to go through, or a law's been made that we have to go through rulemaking. And I want you to understand that some guidance is out there. There's a lot of public perception, but you know, now you have to put it together with your customers. What are you guys going to do? So that's what I have. Beth, Tommy, is there something else that we need to say or share at this moment? Seeing and hearing nothing. This next seminar will be in December, and the subject, how to help your motor carrier track and improve their CSA score, will be a great topic, one that I know I deal with on a daily basis, challenging, one that you can get motor carriers pretty upset when you start talking about it, and we've seen some very good information shared again from Vigilo and others on this topic, but that's what we've got going on December 12th. Again, not seeing anything in the chat box, not seeing any questions. I throw it out there one more time. Is there anything that we can share for the good of the group, or any questions on this topic that I can cover for you? Well, I believe that that's all we have for today. So again, Tommy, if you don't have anything to contribute, or Beth, I'm going to say thank you to all of our attendees. And we got done early today, so class dismissed. Please feel free to follow up with us as you need, and have a good rest of your day. See you next month.